بالله من الشيطان الرجيم إنني أنا الله لا إله إلا أنا فاعبدوني وأقم الصلاة لذكري صدق الله العلي العظيم. Please recite salawat. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. For the hastening of the reappearance of our Imam, please recite a louder salawat. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. And so that we are among the first ones to respond to his call, the ones who can respond before even needing to hear that call, please recite the loudest of salawat. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. Assalamu alaikum jami'an. What we had started to discuss yesterday was the structure of salat, of prayer, and how it can be used as a vehicle for our self-improvement and our success, moving us towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And what perspective, in which way we need to conduct ourselves within salat and around salat, so that we can maximize the benefits that it gives us and provides for us. We mentioned how that Salat, one of its key things that it gives us is this remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It nurtures within us a habit of thought, of thinking, of attention towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Even if our salat is not very, focused, it's not very, the best quality and all of that, it still at the very least has some base level of awareness that we have towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that's something that would happen regardless of how we prayed. Unless, we're very consciously and purposely praying in a way for nefarious purposes and just completely to show off or having zero intent to do it for the sake of Allah. If that's the case, then that's a different story. But most of us are not like that. So we see that it has this sort of habit that it provides us of thinking of Allah, about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and remembering Him. This remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, once it becomes a habit that we've put within ourselves, that constantly we're in a practice, in a state of remembering of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then we see that it has the effect of naturally pushing us to become better, naturally pushing us to improve ourselves with respect to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And we see that this is something that is natural in any sense, right? If you see that you're constantly aware of someone who you have a lot of respect for, then you tailor your actions so that they are in line with the person that you have respect for. Similarly, if we are constantly aware of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then we will tailor our actions so that they are in line with what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants from us. Now, this remembrance that we have, we also mentioned another point yesterday, that it's the opposite of forgetting Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And in the ayah of the Quran, a very frightening ayah, terrifying ayah of the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that the people who forget Him, He makes them forget themselves. Right? لا تكونوا كالذين نسوا الله فأنساهم أنفسهم. Don't be like the ones who forget Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and then He makes them forget themselves. The opposite of that is remembering. So be like the ones who remember Allah. If you remember Allah, then you'll know yourself, you'll understand yourself, you'll realize who yourself is, and that's the path towards self-improvement. The ayah that we started off with in the beginning says that, verily I am Allah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is addressing Hazrat Musa when he comes into that valley, that sacred valley. He says to him that, certainly I am Allah, there is no God but me. So obey me or worship me and establish salat for my remembrance, to remember me. So again, the purpose of salat, or one of the benefits of salat, is being specified as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's remembrance, the remembrance of Allah. Now, because this is the last day that here in the Shahr Ramadan, I want to mention briefly the other structure that helps us, although we've talked about it briefly before, of Sawm, of fasting. We talked about it previously in the context of how it awakens a sense within us of our true need. Like we ignore the needs of our body in terms of the water, in terms of the hunger. We're supposed to be ignoring those needs. And when we do that, we realize there's a more deeper, fundamental need that we have that will only be satisfied with our relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But in another perspective, from another way, it also is something that fosters this attention towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's something where we can understand and realize our position before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It purifies our intentions. It purifies who we are. And we have several hadith regarding this. Now, this fast that we are doing in this month is different from fasts in other times, obviously, because in other times we have the choice. We can do it, on one day, not do it on another day. But the fast in Shahr Ramadan is special not just because it's consecutive in after 30 days or 29 days of fasting, but it's also because the time itself, the time period of this month is something that's blessed. It's something that's a sacred time period. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has put a lot of blessings within this time period itself. And as we started off this series of lectures by saying that there's special times and special places. And those special times and places afford us an opportunity that won't be granted to us in any other time. So the opportunity that we have at this time, at this moment, in this month, will not be the same opportunity. Even if we make it, inshallah, to the next Shahr Ramadan, that's a different opportunity. It won't be the same thing. And so we have to take advantage of every opportunity as they come across us. Now, last time I mentioned, there's this very beautiful dua of wida to the month of Ramadan. I want to just mention a few lines from it. It's dua number 45 in Sahih Sajadiyah, the normal enumeration of the du'as. It says, فَنَحْنُ مَوْضُعُوهِ وِدَاعًا مَنْ عَزَّ فِرَاقُهُ عَلَيْنَا. It says, and we are the ones who are bidding farewell to this month, a farewell it's hard and harsh upon us, it's difficult upon us to bear the separation. وَغَمَّنَا وَأَوْحَشَنَا إِنصَرَافُهُ عَنَّا. And it saddens us and it makes us bewildered and frightened, its departure from us. وَلَزِمَنَا ذِمَامَ الْمَحْفُوظ. And this month has put upon us an obligation, a necessity that's safeguarded. وَالْحُرْمَةَ الْمَرْعِيَّةَ وَالْحَقُّ الْمَقْضِيَّةَ. And a sanctity that must be observed and a right that must be given. And then afterwards in the dua, it starts to talk about addressing the month. It says, Salam alayka ya shahrullah al-akbar. Salam alayka ya Eid awliyaihi. So it starts to address the month, saying, O peace and blessings upon you, O great month of Allah, O Eid of the awliya of Allah. Talks about the month of Ramadan itself as the Eid of the awliya, not the day after, the month itself. The way that it addresses this month, it goes on, and it's a very, very beautiful dua. It emphasizes again and again and again that once this opportunity has passed, we'll miss it. That there's something special about this time period. There's something special that's being provided to us within this month that isn't there at other times. That's not the same as other times. And if we don't pay attention to that, if we don't understand that and realize that at the very least some small amount, then we'll be at a loss. Right? Because it's a loss for us that have every opportunity to move forward, but don't take it. Previously in the dua, in a previous section of the dua, there's a few lines where it says that, I might mistake one or two words of it. I didn't think to write this down, but it says something to the extent of this. That says that we're addressing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It says, أَنْتَ فَتَحْتَ إِلَى غُفْرَانِكَ بَابًا. Right? You are the one who opened a door towards your forgiveness. وَسَمَّيْتُهُ تَوْبَةً. And you've called it tawbah. وَجَعَلْتُ I think it's لهذا الباب دليلا من وحيك. And you've put up for this door a indicator within your revelation. And then it says, it quotes the ayah that says, "Tubu ila Allahi tawbatan nasuha." Right? Then afterwards it quotes that ayah, and the ayah after that, then it says that, in the end of this, it says, فَمَا عُذْرُ مَنْ أَغْفَلَ. It's slightly different. There's a very similar dua to this. I'm trying to remember this one. I think it's مَنْ أَغْفَلَ. Sorry? No, that's in Munajat al-Tawwabin. So that's what I'm saying. It's very similar to that, but it's somewhat different. I think it's something about hadal manzala, right? Someone who, what's the excuse of the one who forgets to reach this manzala, the manzala of God's forgiveness, the state of God's forgiveness, after the door being opened and the indicator being provided. And so this is something we have to ask ourselves. What is our excuse? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is giving us every opportunity to turn towards Him, every opportunity to maximize the benefits that we can provide for ourselves and our families and everyone around us. Right? This month is a month full of opportunities. Right? Even this night, right, the night of Eid, is another opportunity. Right? An opportunity where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is giving blessing after blessing. Look at the a'mal for this, and there's a lot of things that we can do on this night as well. Look at tomorrow. Tomorrow is also a day for a'mal, not just a day for celebration and eating and all of that. No, it's the day where there's a lot of a'mal that have been put for us that we should be doing and observing. Right? If you look at, again, in the same dua, how it talks about Eid, it says it's that make that day a day in which we'll wipe out our sins. Right? Eid is a day where we shouldn't be sinning. Right? We should be more careful on the day of Eid. Right? Because if we think about it, Eid is the day where it's supposed to be where all of our efforts bear fruit. Right? All of the efforts that we've made in this month, even if they're limited, even if they weren't the best, even if they were half-hearted, all of those are supposed to bear fruit on this day, on the day of Eid. And if I turn my back away from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala by starting to sin, by, not conducting myself properly, by not wearing hijab properly, by not eating properly, by not praying properly, by not speaking to each other properly, if I do that, then it's as if I wasted all those efforts. I'm putting, as if all these 30 days that I fasted, I did all these things, so I'm throwing it away. Why should we do that? Right? If we've made the effort to make it this far, let's continue. Let's make it real. And the real thing, the real test, right, of Shahr Ramadan is how we take the improvements we've made within ourselves forward, right, throughout the rest of the year. And so that next month of Ramadan, inshallah, when we meet it, we'll be at a higher starting point than where we were at the beginning of this month of Ramadan. And we can push ourselves more again. Not that we just slide back and then we find ourselves in the same place that we were. Right? In fact, it would be worse because a year has passed and we haven't improved it. So we have to take advantage of it. Take advantage of this opportunity that we have right now, this few hours that are remaining. The next day, the day of Eid, take advantage of it to cement our determination of becoming better, of taking the benefits that we've had and making them permanent, not making it this a temporary thing. Because yes, both in the context of this month and in the context of Salat as well, it's relatively easy to maintain a remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's relatively easy to do the right thing when we're surrounded by the mu'mineen who are also doing the right thing. Right? Constantly being reminded and pushed to do it. It's easy to pray if we're in the center and everyone else is praying. That doesn't mean that we should avoid it and make life difficult for us. No, that's a blessing. But there will be times when we don't have that. When our lives won't be surrounded by these easy opportunities. Where there will be a harsher test, more difficult test. And so we have to make our determination firm so that when we are approached by that test, we can succeed there as well. Now, there's a couple of hadith that I want to mention. There's one hadith by Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam. He says, صوم القلب عن الفكر في الأثام أفضل من صيام البطن عن الطعام. Says that the fasting of the heart from the thinking of sins and the remembrance of sins is greater than the fasting of the stomach from food. So fasting, if we look at fasting and the state of the Sa'imeen, the ones who are known as the ones who fast, it's not just referring to keeping away from food. It's referring to other things as well. The highest level is what's being mentioned here. Fasting in the sense of keeping even our thoughts away from sin, where sin isn't even a thing, an idea that comes across our minds. And this might come and seem like an unachievable thing. It's something that's so far off. How could we do that? But if we pay attention, we realize that it happens to some extent within this month already. That the way that we normally, if we're afflicted by a sin, how it affects us in other times is different from this month. This month there's a lessening of that. And we can maintain that. We can push ourselves. How do we do that? Because if it's like, that common sort of thing that don't think about, if someone says to you, don't think about a pink elephant, the first thing that you do is you think about a pink elephant. If I try to stop myself from thinking about a sin, then the way that we sometimes think about it is that we start thinking more about the sin. But the way to do it, the proper way to avoid thinking about sin, is to start thinking more and more about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because the more you think and reflect upon Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and your position before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the less your mind is capable of drawing towards something other than Allah, of thinking of sin. We have, the verse that says that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala did not put in the chest of man two hearts. Right? There's not two hearts within our chest. There's not two directions we can be taken to. If we're pointed towards Allah, we'll be pointed away from the sin. But the same works the other way around. If we're pointed towards the sin, if sin is what we've practiced, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and His remembrance won't find itself within our hearts. Now, how do we make this move forward, push us forward? In fact, what does it look like to go forward? What it would look like if we were to take this act of fasting forward beyond the month of Ramadan is that we would be observant of our obligations towards Allah. And yes, I know that sometimes it's a boring answer. And it's an answer that I've given several times. But it is the real answer, right? That we are cognizant of our duties to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We become aware of them, we reflect on them, and then we do them. Again and again and again, day in and day out. Every day, every hour, every minute. That's what we're doing. Now, fasting is something that helps with that as well. There's a very beautiful hadith, very, very, very beautiful hadith, very lengthy one, but called the Hadith of Mi'raj. And yes, there is a debate on its sanad as well, but it's a very beautiful hadith, and a lot of the teachers of ethics and things give a lot of attention to this particular hadith, and they have a lot of beautiful commentaries about it. There's a portion on it where there's a conversation between Rasulullah and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, where he asks Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, says, Ya Rabb, wa ma mirathul sawm? Says, oh my Lord, what does sawm give me, basically? What does it inherit to me? It says, قال الصوم يورث الحكمة. That fasting births and it gives you the inheritance of wisdom. وَالْحِكْمَةُ تُورِثُ الْمَعْرَفَةِ. And wisdom gives you the inheritance of ma'rifah, of awareness. وَالْمَعْرَفَةُ تُورِثُ الْيَقِينَ. And ma'rifah this awareness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives you the inheritance of certainty. فَإِذَا اسْتَيْقَنَ الْعَبْدُ لَا يُبَالِي كَيْفَ أَصْبَحَ بِعُسْرٍ أو بِيُسْرٍ. And if an abd, of a servant, reaches this point of yaqeen, of certainty that they're from Allah, that of inna lillah wa inna ilayhi raji'un, if they reach that certainty, then it doesn't matter to them if they start a day, if their day has the start of difficulty or of ease. It makes no difference for them. They're still traveling towards Allah. And so this excuse that we have sometimes, that I'm sinning not because I'm bad, but because the situation forced me, or because I'm in this very difficult situation, or I don't have any other choice, or it's too hard to do the right thing. The excuses that sometimes we might hear or we might say to ourselves. The fasting prevents that. If we fast, it prevents it. And so we can fast. We can fast outside the month of Ramadan. Right? It's not something that's forbidden, alhamdulillah, except for tomorrow. Right? We can pray extra. We can do extra things. We can make an extra effort. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has provided us with these beautiful structures to go towards Him that we can take advantage of. It's not the case that I have to wait for the time when I'm forced to do it to be the only time to do things. I can take the initiative. I can take a step forward. I can look at my calendar year and say that, maybe in this month it's recommended to fast on Thursdays. I'll fast on a Thursday. Maybe it's recommended to start every month fasting. I'll do that. Except for, again, the next month. We can take advantage. One of the structures that are afforded to us, which is an advantage, is the first 10 days of Dhul Hijjah. Right? Which is mentioned that if someone doesn't do dark, doesn't reach Laylatul Qadr and approach it in the way that they're supposed to, they can make up for it on the first 10 days of Dhul Hijjah. There's a beautiful a'mal that we should be doing there, salat that we should be doing between Maghribain. A lot of different a'mal that can be done. And then obviously ending the 9th day with Dua Arafah, right? And having that fasting and then doing Dua Arafah. Obviously the people who are at Hajj, obviously they have even the heightened opportunity for them. But all of those things are opportunities that we're given. We can take advantage of that. But we see commonly, like all of this talk, all of this thing that's being said, right, if we're real with ourselves, perhaps there's things that we've already heard. We've heard maybe year after year, and we see that unfortunately it doesn't really make that much of a difference to us. Right? Unfortunately, our determination might start off strong, and then maybe 1 week, 1 month, sometime it falls off. So what's the solution to that? Now, there's not any foolproof solution. There's not any solution that's going to be there that no matter what I do and no matter how I conduct myself, that'll work for me. That's obviously not going to be the case. But there is a very beautiful solution that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given to us. And that's that I don't approach it as my individual battle. I don't approach it as if I'm the only one struggling. I make a determination to go in this battle and attack these difficulties that I'm facing as a group. There's a practice that can be done where you do this sort of, losing my English, this ahd jami, a sort of a communal, a group-based vow, right? It doesn't have to be a big group. It should be amongst close friends. You have a common understanding that you want to improve something. And you pick something. You say, for example, we're going to make a vow to each other for the next 40 days, we're going to stay in the state of tahara, for example. Vowing that as an individual, it's easy for that. And I don't mean, sorry, just to make this clear, I don't mean a vow in a fiqhi binding vow way. Right? Don't do that. That'll make life difficult for you, then there'll be kafarat if you break it and things like that. Don't do that, right? That shouldn't be done in this case. I mean, just a sort of a determination, like you're expressing your determination and to do a certain action. I mean, a vow in the very linguistic sense of it, the very literal sense of it. So you make this vow not as an individual, but as a group. When you do it as a group, you hold each other accountable. You come to that other person and say, how is it today? Were you able to do it today? Were you not? And just this fact that you have someone who's also going to be asking about it regarding your actions, it makes it much more easy for you to do it. It heightens your motivation to do it. We shouldn't think that our path towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is a path that's based on the individual. It's not. It's based on the society. Yes, the individual is highlighted. It's not the society at the expense of the individual, which is the usual things, debates talked about in sociology and the ways of looking at society, whether it's the individual at the expense of society or society at the expense of the individual. It's neither, right? But the focus, the primary is the society, but it's taking into consideration the individual within the society. And so we can do that. We can make these oaths to each other so we hold each other accountable. In every stage of our path we can do it. And this is obviously, what particular action to do this with is obviously it's better to have someone who can advise you, a true scholar who can advise you on this path. A lot of things are difficult actions that you shouldn't start off with. Maybe Salatul Layl is not the first action that you want to start with. Maybe doing all the nafila prayers are not the first thing that you want to start off with. Maybe you want to start with something simpler and something more easy to do. And obviously the most important thing is the wajibat. But that's something, again, you don't want to expose in front of anyone what wajibat you're not doing or what muharramat all the way that you are committing. You don't want to expose that. But we can say something general, that I have a habit that I am having difficulty with, overcoming, defeating. I'm making this vow in front of you, this friend of yours, that I'm going to defeat this. That I'm Shahr Ramadan, I didn't have the opportunity to do it. Outside of Shahr Ramadan, I'm going to continue not doing it. We do this and we'll see immediately the amount of willpower we have multiplies exponentially. If we take it as a fight that we're in together, then our abilities maximize. And that's the benefit, and the rights and responsibilities that we have over each other are all for fostering this kind of relationship with each other. That we can rely on each other on the most important thing. The food, the money, the physical difficulties, those are important. But they're lower in terms of our needs. What's a higher need is our path towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, this remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. As the last thing that I want to finish on, there's a hadith that's related from Hazrat Musa ala nabiyyina wa alihi wa alayhi salam, where he says that he's conversing with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and he says to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, says, أبعيد فناديتك أم قريب فناجيتك. Says that, are you far away that I should call out to you in a loud voice? Or are you close so that I call out to you in a quiet voice, I can whisper to you? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives a very beautiful response, where he says that, أنا جليس من ذكرني. Says that I am the seating companion of the one who remembers me. That's how he responds. It's a very beautiful response. What that means is that at our fingertips, or at our tongue tips, if you want to say it like that, very accessible to us, is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Right next to us. If we remember Him, He's next to us. And He promises, right? He promises, أَدْعُونِي أَسْتَجِبْ لَكُمْ. If you call upon Him, He'll respond. Everything like that is available to us. We have to take these opportunities. Right? That is a true path towards success. That is true success. Having this remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and live in our hearts, not just in the times when it's easy, but in the difficult times, the day to day, minute by minute, second by second, constantly pushing ourselves to see ourselves in front of Allah subhanahu. When that happens, our life flourishes. When that remembrance isn't there, then it wilters and falls away. This is the last, day that I'm in front of you, and maybe I'll giving inshallah, the khutbah and Eid, but I don't know if I'll remember to say this. But I do ask for your forgiveness for anything and everything. If I've said anything wrong or said anything misguiding, I ask for your forgiveness. And inshallah, it was a great honor. It is a great honor to be amongst mu'mineen, and especially mu'mineen such as yourselves. And it's not something that I see as anything as if I'm addressing you. Throughout all of these nights, I imagined I'm addressing myself as my own audience. You guys are just listening to a weird conversation that I'm having with myself. But it's still, if you heard something that I was saying to myself that was misguiding, then please do forgive me. We do ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that if anything was heard that was misguiding, that He removes it from our hearts and minds and replaces it with that which was useful and beneficial. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make us from amongst the true followers of the Ahl al-Bayt. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to not make this month a month in which our efforts are wasted, but rather a month in which our efforts flourished, and He gives us and rewards us beyond our expectations and beyond what our actions deserve. Barakat salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. اللهم صل على محمد آل محمد.
Brothers and sisters, as we know, tonight is the night of Eid. And so, inshallah, we'll conclude the program with the dua for the month of Ramadan, the dua of Imam Zainul Abidin alayhi salam that he recited to bid farewell to the holy month of Ramadan. The salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد اللهم يا من لا يرغب في الجزاء ولا يندم على العطاء ويا من لا يكافئ عبده على السواء منتك ابتداء وعفوك تفضل